The effect of using non-linguistic representations to help second grade students recall, use, and retain reading vocabulary. The focus question for this project is, why can some students recall, use, and retain reading vocabulary words while others cannot? Even though 18 out of 20 second grade students are reading at or above grade level, and all students have the same exposure to these words through literature, discussion, and practice pages. This question was devised from observation of daily oral reading and guided reading groups, observation of selection discussions, LEAD 21 assessments. And after collaborating with other second grade teachers, it was discovered that this was a common problem across the grade level and needed to be addressed. To address this problem, a new strategy of drawing non-linguistic representations or pictures was implemented. This strategy is backed by research from Marzano and Kane. Marzano states that when students use non-linguistic representations, brain activity is increased and stimulated. Kane says the brain is better at remembering things that are of meaning to the student. Also, the National Reading Panel states that growth in reading power relies on continuous growth in word knowledge. Data was collected from all 20 students in my second grade class using the Unit 6 vocabulary words, LEAD 21 weekly observation records, a differentiated assessment, differentiated readers, and practice book pages. Our procedure for collecting data was as follows. On Monday, the students were introduced to new vocabulary words in Unit 6. On Tuesday, students were using glossaries to look up words and complete practice book pages. On Wednesday, students would practice using vocabulary words in sentences, which was done orally as a group discussion. On Thursday, students would write each vocabulary word in a sentence of their choice. And on Friday, students created non-linguistic representations or pictures for each of the vocabulary words that were introduced that week. This is our reading bulletin board, which contains the reading vocabulary. You can see it as the vocabulary words are circled in yellow. And when we have morning meetings and group discussions, the students sit in front of this reading bulletin board and interact with it on a daily basis. The qualitative data was collected by using observation with two focus questions. One was, can students rapidly recall reading vocabulary while reading in context? In the past, I've noticed that several students would have to stop and sound out words that were weekly vocabulary words, or would just mispronounce reading them in context. Also, I wanted to see if students could use the words properly when answering questions about the story or discussing the selection with peers. Oftentimes in the past, I noticed that when I was looking for answers to contain the vocabulary words, they often were left out. This is the form that I used during guided reading groups to collect the qualitative data, and I used the vocabulary portion. Our quantitative data was collected using LEAD 21 differentiated assessments. The graph shows the data from our Unit 6 differentiated assessment, and then the Unit 5 differentiated assessment, and then we did the Unit 6 differentiated assessment, which was tested after students began drawing the picture representations for each vocabulary word. This is a sample of a page from the differentiated test. The key findings from this action research project were that the quantitative data showed that students still were having a difficult time retaining all 10 vocabulary words that were tested. However, the qualitative data showed that students were able to rapidly recall and use their vocabulary words while reading orally and discussing with peers in guided reading groups. Overall, the use of the non-linguistic representations helped students with their oral recall and usage, but it did not help students retain when tested on paper. And I felt that this was great information to share with parents, because oftentimes they will tell me that students are comprehending or they're able to recall or retell what has read. So this was kind of a good example of how sometimes students are able to do things orally, but when tested on paper, the results may look a little different. And in the future, I will continue using non-linguistic representations because I felt that I did see that it was helping students make a personal connection to the vocabulary. It's a great strategy to use across the curriculum. Our math curriculum has a lot of content vocabulary, and I feel like if they could devise pictures for the math vocabulary, that would help them remember them across the curriculum. And I also felt that it just utilized another learning style and helped my visual and artistic students really engage in the new strategy. So that was my action research project. Thank you for listening.